Welcome back to another episode of The Laws That Matter. I'm Carissa Kranz, and today we have a very interesting segment about religious law, as these are the laws that matter, specifically Judaic law. With us, we have Jonathan Klein, Rabbi Klein, Faith Action for Animals founder, Jeffrey Spitz Cohan, Jewish Veg founder, Sara Eifler, Jewish Veg program manager, and a Jewish entrepreneur, co-founder of Plant Burger, a business restaurant at Whole Foods. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Welcome everybody for joining us. Let's throw us all in since we all have a topic that's near and dear to our heart. So let's begin with you, Rabbi Klein.
Yes.
How is it that Judaism is calling for a so-called spiritual revolution around veganism, despite our cultural conditioning of how we might have grown up having certain foods on our plate?
Well, thank you for this question, and thank you for this interview opportunity to really spread the message that our traditions, which go way back, have built within them all that is needed to focus on a spiritual approach to animal welfare, animal rights, concern for animals. We see throughout all of our sources ways in which compassion for animals is central. We are an old tradition, and as such, of course, it's embedded with all sorts of impacts by human condition of, our desire for, I would say, essentially our desire for material that then impacts animals. But underlying all of that is a baseline concern for the common good and for the welfare of the planet and for ensuring that we take care of one another. And all of that is rooted in a birth story that suggests that God has a direct role in our existence, and whether you see it as evolution or creation, it's kind of irrelevant, because in both cases there's a place for divinity in it and for spirit that goes with that concept. There's no doubt that Judaism is in the world of animals a good place compared to perhaps some traditions that really otherize, you could say, animals. We have anti-speciesist notions built into our sources. I would hesitate to say that Judaism is 100% there for animals at all times. I don't think that any tradition is, because we're built in a milieu of human supremacy. And so out of that, we have to keep that in mind. But that's not the end of the story. And I think that we'll find from our other guests as well that there's plenty of sources that push back on the idea that we have the right to just do what we want. Even the line in Genesis that says that we have the right really to conquer is mitigated in the Midrash by Jewish sources that suggest that we have to be stewards of the planet. And included in that are the animals that inhabit this planet with us.
I think you bring up an important point when you say tradition, because there's certain religious laws and higher laws, and then there's the tradition and cultural traditions that we have implemented as man during our time on this planet as we try to live according to these higher laws. I'm a Jew, but I'm also a vegan from birth. And I would say that veganism is something that I have practiced religiously while I was bat mitzvahed. I can't say that I have truly studied Judaic law to speak confidently and competently on its principles. But I think my guest today and you guys can certainly answer some of the tougher questions that people might, ask. And I'm sure that you guys get, because you're prepared to, answer those questions in accordance with the Torah or Judaic law.
And the most basic baseline law in there is this idea of Tsa'ar Ba'alei Chaim, that we have to protect the well-being of animals, that cruelty is not acceptable in Judaism. And as Jews evolve on this planet, we learn more and more of the ways in which animals are sentient beings, have intellect, have capacities. And so the laws are there based on perhaps a time when we didn't have as much consciousness, But at the same time, underlying all of that is a baseline recognition that you can't be cruel, period. Not just to humans, but to animals as well. And so as we know more and more, once we're able to establish personhood, perhaps legally, since you're a lawyer, I see, if we're able to establish personhood with at least some species other than humans, then the floodgates open to a full acceptance of anti-speciesist notions within our society as Jews.
Mm-hmm. And what is Faith Action for Animals exactly?
So we're an organization here in Los Angeles that is attempting to bring religious traditions into the efforts to protect animals. And what that means is we really started with a focus on legislative strategies, working on fur bans in West Hollywood at first, then Los Angeles, and now the state of California. But we're definitely committed to. We have a philosophy which I think is very much in alignment with those involved in legal strategies, that the best way to move things forward is to pass laws that prevent suffering of animals. And so we organize and mobilize religious leaders of all stripes and varieties, not just Jewish, to support campaigns for better animal welfare laws in California. And I would even go as far as to say animal rights laws as well.
Mm-hmm. And does Faith Action for Animals have any intersection with Jewish Veg?
We are very warm. We love Jewish Veg, and I've actually played a role in the life of of Jewish Veg, and we've done actions together. We did a Kaparot protest last year that was not really a protest; it was more an affirmation of a compassionate approach to that ritual. Let's
stop there and discuss what that ritual is, because not everyone here knows about that.
Sure.
So what is that?
In essence, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish high holy days, we have a ritual where animal is used typically to transfer sin as sort of a symbolic expiation of sin, where we as humans who are fearful that we won't live another year of life, we pass our transgressions onto an animal that has been slaughtered and then given to poor people as food. That's the tradition, not a universal tradition by any stretch of the imagination, not just in liberal Judaism, but in traditional Judaism as well. And yet it's a tradition that you find in particularly Hasidic and Persian Jewish communities. Haredi, I think, is probably a better word for it. That is ultra-Orthodox communities. New York, Los Angeles, and to a limited extent in Chicago, and even a little bit down near San Diego, we're aware. And that tradition has been a question mark in Jewish law ever since the medieval era, where Jewish sources have a sort of a debate back and forth about whether it's okay or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tough law. It's kind of it's a cruel practice that not all Jews know about.
No, thank God.
I would say, like I said, I had a bat mitzvah. I was born Jewish, but more conservative reform. And so those practices were never within my realm of knowingness until more recently, as a vegan. The vegan movement. That's where I learned about it, and I was shocked because. Yeah. It certainly doesn't rest well with me morally to know that there's a sect within Judaism that feels that this is an okay, culturally acceptable practice. So Jeffrey is with us, founder of Jewish Veg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, how'd you get your start with Jewish Veg?
No, just for the record, I am not the founder.
Oh, you're not?
We're about to celebrate our 45th anniversary as an organization. So I would have been 10 years old if I founded the organization. But I was the first professional to work for the organization. And thankfully, we have grown quickly. Since I started, so we now have 5 people working for us, including Sara, who we'll be hearing from soon.
Here's Sara.
And there she is.
And Sara, what's your role with Jewish Veg?
I'm the program director. So it is what it sounds like. I direct the program.
And how long have you been working there?
About 2.5 years at this point.
And what is your overlap with Faith Action for Animals? Have you guys done much together in your time at Jewish Veg and Faith Action for Animals?
Yeah, we've collaborated with Faith Action for Animals, as Rabbi Klein was saying, for the Kaparot protest. Also, Rabbi Klein serves on our rabbinic council and is the rabbinic chair of our Los Angeles chapter. So we work very, very closely with him. And I think everyone in our space, all of the organizations in our space of Judaism and faith and veganism and animal rights, we all work very closely together and are all very good friends with each other. So it's a really collaborative and connective community that we've built.
And how big is the Jewish Veg organization?
Like I mentioned a minute ago, we have 5 employees. So when we're spread coast to coast, and we continue to grow, so we're very grateful to our supporters for enabling this growth. And we're getting bigger all the time.
I attended a Jewish Veg Passover in New York with Victoria Moran.
Oh, nice.
Who took me.
That's right. I saw you there. Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. So it's a great thing that you all are doing. It seems like you have a nice following. I mean, how many members do you have or followers?
No, great question. We have an email list of about 7,000 people. About 8,000 people follow our Facebook page. So again, those numbers continue to grow all the time.
Very important organization, I think, for the Jewish community that really anchors us in consciousness around these issues. I'm really grateful also, I want to say, for Jeffrey in particular, moving this organization that has been around for a long time into unmitigated commitment to veganism. That's your doing. So in a way, you do get credit, my friend.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
So how do you guys deal with any backlash or opposition to, religion to people is very culturally ingrained. They're raised a certain way. They're used to having, a lamb shank on their plate or an egg on their plate over a holiday. How are you addressing that kind of opposition when discussing religious law, biblical law, what the Torah may or may not say? And how are you guiding people into that awakened awareness of Judaism is actually standing for justice and compassion for all beings, and that we're somehow rooted in a stuck mentality of a way that we were culturally conditioned and raised that may not be in alignment with actually what the law says?
Well, there's a ton baked into that question. They're all very good questions. The first thing I'd like to say is this, which is, yes, most Jews, unfortunately, are still consuming animal products. Of course, we're working very hard on that issue, but this is the reality. No rabbi will publicly debate us on these issues. In other words, they will not debate us publicly on whether Jews will be should be transitioning to vegan lifestyles. And in fact, we issued a rabbinic statement in 2017, which Jonathan Klein is on that rabbinic statement, of course, with 75 rabbis urging their fellow Jews to transition to vegan diets. And we're about to re-release this rabbinic statement with 150 rabbis from around the world urging their fellow Jews to join us.
Wow. So are you finding that synagogues are receptive to the message? And how many a year would you say are signing up?
Sara?
Sure. So we have two programs that are relevant specifically to synagogues. One is our Speakers Bureau. So we go to synagogues, JCCs, Hillels, and other Jewish institutions as well. And we give Divrei Torah, we give presentations, and we talk to people and just educate them and give them a basic understanding of the Jewish laws of Sa'ar Ba'alei Chaim and others that relate to animals and our treatment of animals. The other program that we have is called Vegan Option Always, and that is where we ask synagogues at every event to offer a vegan option at all of their meals. We have 10 participating synagogues at this time, and we are currently working on several more, so this is a growing program. This is also something that we as I said, we're a very collaborative space. Shemayim Jewish Animal Advocacy has a program called the Synagogue Vegan Challenge. They have 5 synagogues on their list who offer a vegan event once a month, and it has to be a fully vegan event. So there are a lot of different ways out there for synagogues to move forward into a vegan lifestyle to support our Jewish ethics.
And how receptive are these synagogues? Would you say like you're like one synagogue a year like is pushing the vegan message, or they're just becoming more open into offering vegan options for vegans that might be attending in the congregation? Like what is the actual compound rate here that there's any kind of real movement towards this kind of a diet within the Jewish faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say in terms of metrics, of the 10 synagogues who've joined Vegan Option Always, that happened in 1 year. So this isn't, one a year. This program has only been around for a year. Same with Shemayim, they had 5 last year, they have 5 this year, so that's another 10, and they're different synagogues. And in terms of our Speakers Bureau, we reach, I would say, somewhere between 20 to 30, do you think, Jeff, every year. So definitely we are reaching a wide audience. And that's only synagogues, by the way. We don't only speak to synagogues. We do a wide variety of programs to Jews all across the board, including Jews who are not religious and don't attend synagogue. So I would say in terms of where the Jewish community is moving, I think we're having a wide impact in a variety of areas, exploring how Judaism is more than just these traditions and is about really our ethics, our food culture, and how we can move forward.
And how are you, go ahead, Rabbi.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that, the great work that Jewish Veg is doing is also complemented by the fact that our tradition has all, like I said before, it has all that we need to make this transition happen. We are not, even our most traditional Jewish sects and denominations are open to the possibility of changing over time. We see that some of our greatest leaders have adopted plant-based diets. In particular, stands out that Rav Kook, who was the first chief rabbi in Palestine right before the establishment of the state, was a plant-based consumer and spoke greatly about the concern for animals. We have texts that say that in a messianic era that the lamb will lie down with the lion, right? We have built into our tradition the DNA that is in there is one of potential transformation. And Jews have always adapted to the realities of the world around them. And that's perhaps why we see that perhaps the greatest, movement toward veganism in the world is actually happening in Israel, where you have just droves and droves of folks recognizing that animal cruelty is wrong. It's ethics-based veganism. It's not even just about, the idea of, I want to have a healthier diet. It's actually built on animal rights and concern for their well-being. And we see that in Israel, for instance, they just passed a fur ban. They have always led in many, many ways. You go to Israel now and you find vegan restaurants everywhere. It's unbelievable. And that is just an indicator of why Judaism is so open to this transformation of society. And by the way, a lot of the people who are doing that are secular Jews, not just religious Jews. In fact, it's probably more the secular Jews. So we have in America this movement toward veganism, and the Jewish community in the United States, and I think Jewish Veg is at the forefront of this, is able to adopt these new worldviews that say animals have inherent worth and dignity just like humans do. Now, we have to be careful with that kind of language because we don't want people to think that we are denigrating any sub-community within the Jewish community, within the American society of humans. But actually what we find is that a lot of this is accompanied by a very progressive worldview that is anti-speciesist, very much humanist, and committed to the well-being of all sentient beings, human and non-human as well. I'm very excited for where things are going. The movement is in that direction.
What about this comment from Miriam, who's watching now? I saw a show that when they feel Jesus is coming, they plan to slaughter thousands of animals. Do you know about any biblical law with that?
No, there is great debate within Judaism. Obviously Jesus, we have a different view of Jesus than Christians do. But in terms of the Messianic era, which I think the questioner is referencing, Jonathan just spoke to it in the book of Isaiah, which among the Jewish central canon is the most authoritative depiction of what the Messianic age might look like. That's where the quote Jonathan used came from. Even the previously carnivorous animals will be vegan. Never mind the humans, who of course will be too.
Mm-hmm. And when you guys are out spreading this message of veganism and Judaism and how it's aligned, how do you, and Sara, I'll let you take this one, how do you address those that say the Jewish religion is calling for these animal products on our plate? Every high holiday, we have this expectation that on our plate there should be a certain lamb shank or a certain egg. Why would our tradition be built on that if the religion wasn't really calling for that?
Okay, so there are two separate things I want to address about that question. So the first one is the concept, and I think you're referring to a Seder plate, which has like the lamb shank bone and the egg. So as you know, we host vegan Passover Seders throughout the country, and we have substitutes for those things on the Seder plate. For instance, instead of the shank bone, you can have a roasted beet. Instead of the egg, you can have a potato or other different plant foods. So it is absolutely, not only is it easy and possible to replace those foods with plant foods, there's precedent dating back to the Talmud, which is one of our legal books. The other thing I want to address about that is this concept that meat is integral to Judaism. And I want to say that is a concept that has to do with our history as a people and our recent history in particular. And there are Jews have settled everywhere. Jews have gone everywhere in the world. It's called a diaspora. One of the places that we've gone is Eastern Europe. And in America, there's a lot of kind of preference in a lot of ways and privilege given to Jews from that specific community, which is called Ashkenazi. In the Ashkenazi community, there is a lot of meat products. And the reason for that is because that our history is of being oppressed in these countries. We were put in shtetls, which are little poor villages. We were put in ghettos, separated communities that we weren't allowed to interact with other communities. And at those times, we didn't have access to fresh produce. We didn't have access to a lot of money. We didn't have a way of getting food. So the foods that have become traditionally Jewish, foods like brisket, gefilte fish, schmaltz in particular, these are foods of poverty and oppression. They're foods that we had to subsist on at a time when we didn't have access to anything else. That is not where we are, and they're not traditional Jewish foods. Rosh Hashanah, for instance, the high holidays, the traditional foods for that holiday are pomegranates, they're beets, they're all plant foods. Our Shabbat Hamanim are the 7 sacred species that are enumerated in Deuteronomy. It's these foods that it is said you shall eat and be satisfied. They are all plant foods. So real Jewish foods are not these foods from Eastern Europe that we've incorporated into our own culture. They're really foods that uphold Jewish ethics and traditions.
Mm-hmm. And Rabbi Klein, Do you feel, or do you hear people say that you're doing the high holidays an injustice by replacing a lamb shank with a beet, for example?
Yeah, Passover, you mean? But you know,
Passover, yeah.
certainly
All the
there are
holidays.
people.
I mean, I grew up going to Jewish holidays at the dinner table, and I was the only vegan at these family dinners, and there really wasn't much for me to eat.
Yeah. So I'm going to zoom out for a second and speak more from the tension between law and sociology, right? I mean, we have a culture that is embedded in Western culture. And I think Sara spoke very eloquently about how our traditions are built upon an architecture of Western civilization. Now, that Western civilization has a long history of animal cruelty, to be quite honest, and also the consumption of animals, and you know, and it went on steroids once we had factory farming. The Torah never said anything about factory farming, and I guarantee you that anyone who would be dropped in from that time period in front of a factory farm would be absolutely horrified and say, this is Tsar Ba'alei Chaim, this is animal cruelty, this is not what God wants. There's nothing about this that feels right. So there are folks in the animal rights world that will say, well, we can't really talk about any gray area. But I'm one person who would say that there's a step theory, and we need to, you know, eliminate factory farming, and then we can go to the other kinds of animal, what we believe is animal cruelty, you know, the free range and all that stuff, which I think, you know, in terms of how it's impact. I know we don't really have time to talk about that, but I think that it's important to understand that Jewish law is not committed to animal cruelty and is not committed to animal consumption. And while there are places where you see a little bit of animal focus, I think that that can be a great big decoy from the central message. And going back to the sociology, it is really hard to kill cultural norms that involve anything, whether it be oppression of women, whether it be animal cruelty. All of that stuff is almost hard. It feels hardwired at times. And yet at the same time, we know that that Jewish culture adopted a better worldview with the destruction of, you know, when the temple was destroyed, animal sacrifice disappeared because there was no place to do it. The one remnant is that shank bone on the Passover Seder plate. But if you look at actually, there's a handful of people that want to see the temple rebuilt, and it's in our liturgy as if we want it rebuilt. But I don't know any Jews who really imagine or are moving actively to bringing about animal sacrifice again. It's almost a blood libel against the Jewish people to think that we want to bring back the temple. Very few people, even in the Orthodox world, there are not people actively working to bring it about. So what that means is that culture shifts, culture changes, and that's about the sociology. It is not about the law. We have to have a more expansive understanding of what Judaism is beyond just the legal aspects, which I think we have solid foundation for saying veganism is 99% of the way there, and we'll deal with the 1% when we get there. But also that the cultures change, and as you know, the animal rights movement that is secular actually is helping the Jewish world become more vegan. And I think that that's an important thing for people to understand. It is not this foreign influence that some in the Orthodox world that are really beholden to kaparot or to any of these traditions suggest. Those are really polemics against animal rights, but it's really about bloodthirst. It's not about Judaism. And we have to make that distinction. The other thing I just want to say is there's this idea that is out there about kaparot, that the suffering of the chicken is part of the ritual, the punishment of the chicken. That is not true. And there are people even in the animal rights movement who say that, and I really want to push back against that. Judaism does not have an anti-animal basis, and we need to be clear that we want to tease out the better elements of Judaism, because culturally that's how you make the shift.
Mm-hmm. You bring back a memory that I had when I was in college. I would go to some of the Shabbat dinners at the Chabad house at University of Florida, actually, the Lubavitch rabbi there. And I remember the Rebbitzin saying that they believed that when the Messiah would come, that my way of having a Shabbat dinner, which was vegan, was going to be the way of the future, that would have been that is what God will want. So while having Shabbat dinners now that's not vegan, they are very much aware and open that, oh, the way Carissa's eating now is the way it's gonna be. And they were very supportive of it, and they're Orthodox.
Right, because there's this idea that we're gonna return to the Garden of Eden. And we all know that in the Garden of Eden, according to the Bible itself, animals were coexisting, and there was certainly no factory farming, to say the least. There was really, we were not permitted to eat animals. And Jeffrey has spoken greatly at this out there in his efforts to move the world toward greater veganism. Our tradition started, it's a return to a better, pristine time when we were in the garden.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that factory farming and getting rid of factory farming is actually a popular notion. I think most people don't want factory farming, even if they eat meat. I think the harder argument to come up against is how religious tradition could justify getting rid of all meat or humane free-range meat, which I believe there's no such thing as humane meat because there's no such thing as humane murder. But like you said, you take one argument at a time. And I think getting rid of factory farming, if you drop anyone from that era into this era in front of a factory farm, they're going to say this is a horrific practice. I mean, there's no way religious law of any religion that speaks to love thy neighbor like thyself and justice and compassion and being stewards of the planet, there's no way that we would be in support of factory farming. Jeffrey, we lost there for a bit, but you're back on here. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
No, just the reason Rabbi Klein and 149 other rabbis sign a rabbinic statement like this, if I can speak for all 150, basically comes down to this. Sara Eifler, which Rabbi Klein's, I think both have referenced. It is a Torah prohibition on causing cruelty to animals. So if you look at just the kosher sector and kosher slaughter, it doesn't matter how you kill the animal anymore, because the animal got there through a violation, actually multiple violations of Zar Ba'alei Chayim. So in Jewish law, and I think in any type of legal system, and Carissa, you could speak about this, in any type of legal system, including Jewish law, you cannot have a good deed enabled by a crime or a sin. Mm-hmm. You can't steal money to give charity, for instance. The exact same principle applies here. You can't have kosher meat because Zar Ba'alei Chayim, a Torah mandate, was violated before the animal ever got to the kosher slaughterer.
And when you say it was violated by multiple crimes, what do you mean by that?
Well, this is something even many Orthodox Jews do not know, which is no kosher meat company raises its own animals. They purchase the animals from the factory farming system 99% of the time. So any of the cruelties, and of course, we could spend the next 24 hours listing those cruelties. Any of the cruelties you see in factory farming apply to kosher meat as well.
Mm-hmm. So Yeah. So you're basically saying that because of the atrocities and the crimes that are happening on factory farms, such as, I don't know, raping the animal to impregnate them, or kidnapping their baby calf away from them to making it veal, and all the host of true crimes that we as humans understand to be crime in our legal court system today, we are committing and carrying out a massive scale in these factory farms. And then we're plucking the animals out of these factory farms, and then we're putting them into these kosher slaughterhouses to then carry out a prayerful slaughter. There's no way that they can actually ever really be kosher, because you're taking it from you're plucking it out of a criminal setting. You're not actually, is that what you mean when you say it?
Precisely, yes.
I would add that the treatment of those animals actually leads to their kashrut being questionable, and some Orthodox rabbis have written about milk in particular, because of the number of ways in which these milk cows are suffering along the way. Their milk actually ends up with blood and other foreign components in them, like pus, essentially. I don't mean to be so disgusting, but let's be honest about what we're doing here. We're saying that that's kosher, and that's not kosher. You're not allowed to consume the blood of an animal at the most basic line. So you have people who are saying, even if you think that factory farming is okay, the products from these factory farms are not okay.
I also would like to add just something about kashrut in general, which is to say we're talking about a very specific thing in terms of how these laws of kashrut are being violated, which is very true. But the laws of kashrut exist in the first place to move us away from eating animals and animal products. Every single law of kashrut has to do with a restriction on eating animals and animal products, and it's a method of making us move away from the problematic consumption of animals, which Judaism acknowledges as not good, towards eating plants, which has no restrictions whatsoever. So even while we're talking about violating kashrut, kashrut itself is designed to restrict us and to move our attention towards eating better and being better in the world.
Mm-hmm. So is there any kosher symbol that can truly be trusted to be kosher? Because it sounds like it can't. It sounds like what you're saying is anything claimed kosher is not really kosher per Judaic law, because we're violating at the very core, the entire practice of what kashrut is supposed to prevent us from doing.
Well, I would say just a slight different way of saying it, because anything that is vegan, except for the week of Passover, is kosher. Anything that is actually truly vegan is going to be kosher.
So what about right? So I'm the founder of BeVeg, vegan certification firm, and I'm learning a lot right now, because I'm now understanding that all these kosher claims, actually maybe vegan's the real kosher. I'm getting this revelation right now. Like,
it absolutely is, and that's part of what helped me to go vegan, is a recognition that my life is simplified greatly. I don't have to worry about, whether there's trace bits of animal products that are going to
vegan's the new kosher. So if you want to follow a kosher diet, you got to go follow a vegan diet.
Exactly. Vegan is the new kosher, and vegan is the original kosher. Right.
In fact, if you look at the original Jewish Veg rabbinic name, which you can find on our website, on our homepage, jewishveg.org, if you just listen to Rabbi David Rosen, who is a prominent Orthodox rabbi, former chief rabbi of Ireland, who says, this is an exact quote, "Veganism is a new kosher, and any other type of kosher is highly problematic." For the reasons we've talked about today.
I like this. So we've certified a couple of companies that been specifically kosher companies, and they kind of poo-pooed the vegan certification because to them they're not vegans, but they want the marketing aspect of the vegan symbol. So they wanted to add us to their kosher claim, but they were very dismissive of the vegan claim and the vegan certification because it's just not as important as kosher in their mind. So I really am enjoying this conversation, and I think it's a.
You should definitely pair up with a rabbi or two that are perhaps one that's on Jewish Veg's list in the Orthodox world to ensure a certification. Because to my knowledge, and maybe Jewish Veg, you know better, that there's I'm unaware of any kosher certifier that also claims veganism. We have vegan conversations, we have kosher conversations, and ne'er the twain shall fully meet. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. But what an incredible opportunity as we move in this 21st century reality to say your food is going to be certified 100% cruelty-free and in alignment with God's will.
Yeah, and this is the true kosher. I mean, when they say as a figure of speech, I don't think that seems kosher. That comment doesn't seem kosher. What that person doesn't seem kosher. I mean, that's what that means. It doesn't seem kosher. And kosher, I guess, from what you're saying, isn't really kosher because of all the crimes that it's going through, which is against religious and Judaic law and biblical law to come to the slaughterhouse to go through the kosher ritualistic slaughter. So I've learned a lot on this episode. And I think it's a great time to add the other person on who's the co-founder of Plant Burger, Jonah. Thank you for joining us. You're on mute, so you should come off mute. Also a Jewish entrepreneur. So before we get into Plant Burger and all the awesome things that you're doing as a BeVeg vegan certified business, tell us about your journey to veganism as a Jew.
Absolutely. And I first want to say thank you.
We can't hear you.
Oh, really? I'm off mute now. Can you hear me now?
I'm hearing him, if that helps.
Okay, fantastic. I want to thank you, everyone, Rabbi Klein, Sara, and Jeffrey, and Carissa for organizing this conversation. It's really, obviously, near and dear to my heart as a Jewish vegan entrepreneur. And I'll say, a bit about my journey. I want to focus a little bit more on the vision of Tikkun Olam through Jewish food, but just to share a bit about my personal philosophy as it relates to veganism and Judaism. I was raised in a Reconstructionist household and taught to question what was given to me. And so at a very young age, I visited an animal sanctuary and connected to animals and started asking questions like, why are we eating these animals if they have such unique characters and if they're so wonderful and pleasant to be around? And I think the cognitive dissonance that exists in our society was palpable at a very young age, that we all claim to love animals and we're adamant against animal cruelty, yet when it happens on a massive, large-scale industrial level, we're all complicit and complacent with that system. And so I started to get on the couch in the mornings and just go on these long rants where I would guilt trip more or less my family into adopting a vegetarian and ultimately now vegan lifestyle and diet. And as I spoke to some of you before, I mentioned that my bar mitzvah portion was re'eh, which is the laws of kashrut. And that was more or less a fire and brimstone speech that I made from the bima, or from the stage in my synagogue, where I made a pretty impassioned call to action to the congregation to really think deeply about where's your food coming from, and are you okay with the impacts that it's having on animals, on your own body, and on the environment. And that's sort of what sent me on the path of studying food systems, studying food policy. And I'm so proud to be a part of a company that is trying to change the paradigm of where meat comes from, how we consider fast food, and doing it in the most delicious and fun way possible. So you can see there our phrase is, eat the change you wish to see in the world. And that's really the challenge that we have to ourselves and to to the market, let's try and embody the values that we all hold near and dear. We all want to fight for a better future, a better climate future. We want to treat animals with respect and dignity. We want to be healthy and happy in our own bodies. And so eat the change you wish to see in the world really is what we hope to instill in our customers. And we want to really mainstream this. So it is a very inclusive brand, and it's more about uplifting. And I agree, I think, definitely with the conversations that are going on. And I'm so grateful that we have people like you, Jeffrey, Sara, and Rabbi Klein, for advancing the philosophical arguments. And what our brand does is I agree very much with all that, but we as a brand are more about positivity, inclusivity, and trying to democratize plant-based food for mainstream markets.
Which you are doing, because I don't know if everyone here is aware, but you're in whole food chains.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so we have this phenomenal partnership with Whole Foods Market that enables us to inhabit their underutilized spaces and demonstrate proof of concept, serve all sorts of people our delicious food, and through that, really, it's been a great opportunity that really. So now we celebrated our year anniversary. We're into a year and a month now of existing as a business and as a restaurant. And just last Friday, we opened our 7th store. So we feel very grateful we're able to continue growing and providing people with delicious food during the public health crisis and the pandemic.
And how many Whole Foods Market stores are you in now?
7.
Oh, you're in 7 in one year, and this is your first year and going at it. How did that partnership come to be? I'm sure a lot of people would have liked that partnership.
Yeah, definitely. So it started when I was having conversations with my family, and my father, Seth Goldman, is the past TEO and CEO of Honest Tea, and went on to be the chairman of the board at Beyond Meat. It was also a company that I worked for as a marketing intern in 2012. And so he was at a conference with Chef Spike Mendelsohn, who is one of the best burger chefs in America. And he brought samples with him, as he always does, and slid a cooler of Beyond Meat burgers over under the table to Spike and told him, go home, check these out, and let me know what you think. And it just so happens that Spike's wife, Cody, is actually a vegan, and that difference in their diets had always created a bit of friction when it came to eating a family dinner. So I think he was impressed with the product from a taste and from an experience level, but it was also wonderful that it was able to unite all of the members of his family around the table eating the same delicious burger. And so that was sort of the seed was planted, if you will, to eventually sprout into what is today Plant Burger, or PLNT. And the letters PLNT, we want to evoke the different names of plant, planet, and plenty. And again, it's about spreading the plant-based food and advancing the plant-based movement to create a more just and plentiful food system for all and a healthier planet for future generations.
I love that. And I know, Rabbi Klein, you have to sign off, so I want to give you an opportunity for any final words before you go, and how can people find you?
Thank you. I'm heading to Iowa. I just want to let folks know that they need to vote because there's an impact on all of this. I'm speaking now individually here. I'm going to Iowa to help turn that state into a better state than it has been. And, you know, I think that we just have to be a little more understanding of one another. That includes our patience with those who are not in alignment. I think the more veganism is aligned with humanism, that is and when I say humanism, I'm obviously not speaking as a speciesist. The more we just accept one another as being on a journey and accept the inherent worth and value and dignity of every person around us, including our opponents on these issues, the faster the transition to a plant-based economy and vegan lifestyle will go. because I think we're in an era right now, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a the most turbulent political period, perhaps since World War II, maybe even before that. In all that is going on, we have to recognize that humans are humans, and most of us, unlike our host in this program, were born as meat consumers, most of us. And we're on a journey, and we need to give people a little bit more slack. I think that is just a cultural thing that we all need to do, whether we're talking about animal issues or other issues. We need to be kinder to each other. And that's at the heart of Judaism as well. And that's, again, another way in which I think we will see this transition to a fully vegan world moving forward in Jewish community. I think Jewish community has always led in many of the cultural shifts, whether it be around the right to choose for women, or whether it be about political matters and governmental systems. We have always played a lead role, and we see that in veganism we have all the capacity to do those things. And I think we need to draw from our inherent love of humanity as a way to help us move forward and be less hateful and vengeful. And doesn't mean we can't stand for what we believe in. We have to stand for what we believe in, but not in such a way that it ends up with ad hominem attacks against others, whether it be humans or otherwise, for that matter. So that's my message. That's what I believe. And meanwhile, we need to pass laws that are going to get us there, because that's how we really move the needle. That's essential. So I hope to have partners in that through Faith Action for Animals. Grateful for all of the folks on this call as well. And I'm going to be quiet now and take off for my flight. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. And I know you got to go, but anytime you want to discuss passing any laws, don't forget I'm a lawyer and vegan and really care about this stuff. So keep me in mind if there's any kind of legislation or laws you want me to help push.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
faithactionforanimals@gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat window, and hope that, our internal one, and I hope that you will follow up. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Rabbi Klein. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sara, any final thoughts with you before you go? How can people find you? Any final moments?
Absolutely. So first of all, I really want to applaud Rabbi Klein for what he just shared. I think it's also true that everyone is on a journey. And at Jewish Veg, we actually have a program called Plant Pathways that people can join if you're not fully vegan, or if you are and you just want a Jewish community to kind of support you through whatever transition you're going through, or just through the experience of having a Jewish community to come to talk about these issues. Please join us. You can find us at jewishveg.org. You can find Plant Pathways at plantpathways.org. We do a lot of work around helping people become more vegan, live more in line with their values. So please check us out. Please contact us and get involved with what we're doing. And thank you so much, Carissa, for having us on today.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope people stick with it and watch the entire show. Jeffrey, any final thoughts, remarks? How can we find you?
No, just since Sara and I are colleagues, we're both at jewishveg.org. And we would be remiss if we did not mention that Sunday, November 1st, is World Vegan Day. So we have a very special program scheduled for that day in noon Eastern time, where we will have speakers online talking about and showing how to make Jewish vegan recipes from all over the world.
Wow.
So more information, if you go to, there's been a lot of websites mentioned, pandemicfree.org, where you can find out about our Toward a Pandemic Free World campaign. And in the event section, you'll see how to register for our World Vegan Day event. So thank you, Carissa, for this great discussion.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for joining me. I really enjoyed it. And now I'm going to go to the final few minutes to Plant Burger and Jonah, and I want you to talk about your BeVeg certification and congratulations on why that was important to you. I love the conversation today where vegan certification is the new kosher. I mean, this was such a perfect episode to have you all on as the featured vegan certified brand of the week, as a Jewish entrepreneur that has your own story of coming to veganism through Judaism, and you have a business chain, restaurant chain that's now popping up in Whole Foods markets across the country. So I think you have a lot to add and to share. So I want you to take the floor and talk about it for the last few moments.
Sure. Yeah, I think a fitting way to maybe summarize how I feel about this and how proud we are to be BeVeg certified is just through sharing the 5 values that we founded the business on. The first is to bring people joy. We do that through the food, through the same classic comfort foods, burgers, fries that everyone knows and loves. The second value is to respect and celebrate all life and have gratitude for this incredible existence we have on this planet. The third value is to act with intention and try as much as we can to implement our values through our choices and really use our dollars as a vote for the world we want to live in.
I always say that.
Yeah. The fourth value is to connect to the source and really think deeply about where does meat come from? What comprises meat? It starts with plants, and that's inherently how animals develop their flesh, is through eating the protein, the fats, the trace minerals that exist in plants. That's how they built their flesh. So, but it also means connecting to the source, connecting to the community. And I'm proud that we actually were able to support Jewish Veg through one of our what we call community friend-raising nights, where we invite in local organizations that share our values, and we donate 20% of our proceeds to them. So back in the early days, we did have the DC Jewish Veg chapter come into our restaurant and enjoy some delicious food in an effort to support their mission as well. And the final and fifth deep-seated value is to create positive systemic change together. And that is why it's important for us to be BeVeg certified. That's why it's also important for us to be certified kosher, even though we are a vegan restaurant, because it means access to everybody.
You're kosher by default if you're vegan.
So yes, that is true in a way, but we have to make sure that our equipment is certified kosher. Our vegetables need to be triple washed. The products that we use for our sauces have to be, of course, certified vegan and certified kosher. And so we are really proud to be able to serve everybody, no matter your dietary restriction. And we offer this to the public in a way that embraces, as Rabbi Klein says, it has to be understanding of people no matter where you are in your journey. You could be an omnivore, a reducitarian, someone who loves burgers. No matter where you are, we want to bring you joy through a burger that's just as juicy and delicious and indistinguishable from the animal products that you know and love, but again, is much better for people, much better for the planet, and creating a more just food system.
Mm-hmm. And where are your 7 locations?
Thank you for asking. So we're located, our first store was in Silver Spring. We're in South Capitol, DC, Navy Yard, Shaw as well, in Florida Avenue, DC. And we recently opened in Tyson's Corner in Old Town. We're also open in Columbia, Maryland, and we have one store in Wynwood, Pennsylvania.
And do you have any plans that you wish to disclose or discuss about any further openings or movements that you'll be making?
We have an app, so I don't want to say too much about our future growth. We definitely have the vision of one day taking market share from McDonald's and growing to the scale that we can truly affect systemic change in the fast food industry. We have an app that is really efficient for ordering. You get free fries when you download. I would say definitely also follow us, join the movement on all of our social channels. And we are really proud to also be a part of the Plant Your Vote Challenge, which is an initiative that Spike Mendelson, our chef, and Carla Hall initiated to get people to share their favorite plant-based recipes in an effort to turn out the vote in a major way. It's another just phenomenal initiative that you can do to post on any of your platforms and encourage people to celebrate plant-based food and join in, participate in this in the democracy.
Mm-hmm. I also want to say that it's a complete coincidence that you were scheduled today, the same day that we've had this topic of Judaism and Jewish veg on the show. And it is a perfect time to say that that is science and synchronicity, which is evidence of the universe. And that's true ultimate karmic law, universal law. We live in a law-based universe. And I had no idea before the show that you had any kind of partnership or contribution or history with Jewish veg. So complete coincidence that I think has worked out miraculously well for today's episode. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Carissa, so much for having me and for having this really important conversation. It was a pleasure.
And thank you everyone else for joining us for another week of the Laws That Matter. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, noon Eastern Standard Time here on the Jane Unchained News Network.